In 1961, a suburban housewife vanished from her own home in broad daylight, leaving behind a scene that defied every logical explanation. The evidence suggested something far more disturbing than a simple disappearance, and the official investigation would uncover details that challenged the very nature of reality itself. First, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our investigations. It was October 24th, 1961, just before noon, in the quiet suburb of Lincoln, Massachusetts. The tree-lined streets of this affluent community, 20 miles west of Boston, carried the crisp autumn air through neighborhoods where nothing extraordinary ever seemed to happen. White colonial homes sat nestled among maples and oaks, their leaves painting the landscape in shades of amber and crimson. Joan Risch lived at 4 Old Bedford Road with her husband Martin, a successful optical engineer, and their 2 young children. The 31-year-old woman had spent the morning like countless others before it, tending to domestic routines in their comfortable 2-story home. Her 4-year-old daughter Lillian had departed for nursery school around 9:30, leaving Joan alone with 2-year-old David. According to the official case files, Joan had spoken with her dentist's office that morning, confirming an appointment scheduled for the following day. The receptionist would later testify that Joan's voice carried no trace of distress or unusual concern. Phone records confirmed the call occurred at approximately 10:15, establishing Joan's presence in the home less than 2 hours before the first signs of catastrophe emerged. At 11:45, a neighbor woman walking her dog along Old Bedford Road noticed something peculiar. The front door of the Risch home stood wide open, an unusual sight for the typically security-conscious neighborhood. More disturbing still, she observed what appeared to be dark stains on the front steps and walkway leading to the house. The neighbor's concern deepened when she noticed 2-year-old David Risch wandering alone in the front yard, his clothing disheveled, and his face streaked with what looked like dried tears. The toddler seemed confused and frightened, calling repeatedly for his mother in a voice that carried across the quiet street. Police arrived at 12:20 to find a scene that would haunt investigators for decades. The interior of the Risch home told a story of violence that made no logical sense. Blood spatter patterns covered the kitchen walls in a configuration that forensic experts struggled to interpret. The heaviest concentration appeared near the telephone, where crimson droplets had dried in peculiar formations that seemed to follow no natural trajectory. More blood traced a path from the kitchen through the living room toward the front entrance, but the pattern defied conventional understanding of how such evidence should appear. Rather than the expected drag marks or footprints, the blood formed an almost deliberate trail, as if someone had carefully placed each drop in a specific sequence. The kitchen window above the sink had been shattered from the inside, glass fragments scattered across the backyard lawn. Investigators noted that the break pattern suggested tremendous force, far beyond what a person of Joan's slight build should have been able to generate. Something else troubled the forensic team. Shiny shards of the glass bore traces of blood, but the DNA analysis would later reveal genetic markers that matched no known human profile. David Risch, found unharmed but deeply traumatized, provided the only witness testimony available. The 2-year-old's fragmented account, pieced together through careful questioning by child psychologists, painted a disturbing picture of his mother's final moments. According to David's broken recollections, Joan had been speaking to someone in the kitchen when he heard her cry out in apparent pain or fear. The child described seeing his mother near the broken window, but his account included details that investigating officers found impossible to verify. David insisted that his mother had been talking to the red lady who came through the glass, a figure he described as wearing clothes the color of dried leaves and speaking in a voice that sounded like wind through trees. More troubling still, David claimed his mother had seemed to recognize this mysterious visitor, greeting her by name. However, the child's pronunciation of the name proved unintelligible to investigators, consisting of sounds that seemed to blend consonants and vowels in ways that defied normal speech patterns. The blood evidence presented its own set of impossible contradictions. No human being could lose that quanta, Joan Risch, but the volume found throughout the house suggested injuries that should have proven immediately fatal. No human being could lose that quantity of blood and remain conscious, let alone mobile enough to create the complex trail patterns discovered by investigators. Yet the blood's distribution told a different story entirely. Rather than pooling in locations where a victim might have collapsed or sought help, the evidence appeared in places that suggested purposeful movement. Drops appeared on the second-floor landing, in the basement near the furnace, and even on the interior surface of the front door, as if Joan had touched it while leaving the house. The investigation took an even stranger turn when detectives discovered Joan's personal belongings scattered throughout the home in a pattern that defied explanation. Her purse remained on the kitchen counter, wallet intact with $47 in cash untouched. Her car keys sat beside the telephone, and her coat hung normally in the front closet. However, several items were conspicuously missing from Joan's wardrobe. Investigators noted that a specific red dress, one that neighbors described Joan wearing frequently during autumn months, could not be located anywhere in the house. More puzzling, the dress had been hanging in Joan's bedroom closet just 2 days earlier, according to her husband's testimony. The missing dress sparked a connection to David's earlier testimony about the Red Lady. Child psychologists working with the boy noted his consistent insistence that his mother and the mysterious visitor had worn identical clothing, both dressed in the same deep red color that matched fallen maple leaves. Martin Risch's alibi proved solid and verifiable. The optical engineer had been attending a business meeting in downtown Boston, surrounded by colleagues who confirmed his presence throughout the critical time period. Phone records showed he had called home twice during the morning, reaching Joan on both occasions with no indication of distress. When Martin returned home that evening, police informed him of his wife's disappearance. His reaction, documented in official reports, struck investigators as genuine shock and bewilderment. The man appeared completely unprepared for the news, and subsequent polygraph examinations detected no signs of deception in his responses. The neighborhood canvass revealed additional disturbing details that complicated the investigation further. Several residents reported seeing a woman matching Joan's description walking along Old Bedford Road during the early afternoon, but their accounts contained impossible contradictions. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, who lived 3 houses down from the Risches, insisted she had observed Joan walking toward the woods behind the neighborhood around 1:15. The sighting seemed plausible until Mrs. Patterson described the woman's appearance in detail. According to her testimony, Joan had been wearing the missing red dress, but the fabric appeared torn and stained with dark patches. More troubling, Mrs. Patterson claimed the woman she saw moved with an unusual gait, as if walking required tremendous effort. The figure had paused frequently, turning to look back toward the Risch house with what the witness described as an expression of profound sadness mixed with resignation. Another neighbor, Mr. William Morse, reported a similar sighting approximately 30 minutes later, but his account placed the red-dressed woman nearly 2 miles away, near Lincoln's historic cemetery. The timeline made such movement physically impossible, yet both witnesses remained adamant about their observations. The wooded area behind the Risch neighborhood became the focus of intensive search efforts. State police, local volunteers, and tracking dogs combed every square foot of the dense forest that stretched for miles toward the Sudbury River. The searches yielded no trace of Joan Risch, but investigators discovered something that deepened the mystery considerably. Deep within the woods, search teams found a clearing that residents claimed had never existed before Joan's disappearance. The circular space, roughly 30 feet in diameter, contains no vegetation despite being surrounded by dense undergrowth. The soil within the clearing appeared different from the surrounding forest floor, darker and somehow more fertile. More disturbing, searchers discovered fragments of red fabric caught on branches at the clearing's perimeter. Laboratory analysis confirmed the material matched the missing dress from Joan's wardrobe, but the fabric showed signs of age that made no sense. The fibers appeared weathered by years of exposure to the elements, not the few days since Joan's disappearance. The investigation stalled as evidence accumulated without providing clear answer. Joan's medical records revealed no history of mental illness or depression that might suggest voluntary disappearance. Her relationships with family and friends appeared normal and supportive. Financial records showed no unusual transactions or hidden debts that might motivate flight. Yet the blood evidence remained impossible to explain through conventional theories. The quantity suggested fatal injury, but the absence of a body contradicted that conclusion. The distribution patterns implied conscious movement, but no injured person could have survived long enough to create such an extensive trail. The case files, recently declassified after decades of restricted access, reveal one final piece of evidence that investigators kept hidden from public knowledge. 3 weeks after Joan's disappearance, residents of Old Bedford Road began reporting unusual dreams that shared remarkably consistent details. Multiple neighbors described vivid nightmares featuring a woman in red who wandered through their homes during the night, searching for something she had lost. The dream figure never spoke, but her presence filled witnesses with overwhelming sadness and an inexplicable sense of ancient loss. Most disturbing, several residents reported waking to find small traces of dried blood on their bedroom floors, despite having no injuries or obvious source for such evidence. Laboratory analysis of these samples proved inconclusive, yielding results that matched no known blood type or genetic profile. The official investigation concluded without resolution, filing Joan Risch's case as an unsolved missing person matter. However, the evidence sealed in police archives tells a different story, one that challenges fundamental assumptions about the nature of disappearance itself. What do you think really happened to Joan Risch in that kitchen on that October morning? And could the mysterious Red Lady have been more than just a traumatized child's imagination? Subscribe to explore more cases where the official explanation barely scratches the surface of an impossible truth.